Uh, to Novel Idea. Thank you all, this wonderful crowd tonight. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Bruce Kaufman. I know Greg, and we met a few years ago, and I'll introduce him, and then it's all his show then. But thank you for coming out and showing support. And let's do though. Also give Oscar and Joanna and Novel Idea a hand for this beautiful.
Absolutely.
A lot of you may know him more than I do, but I'm just going to go into this. Greg Stidham was a pediatric ICU physician, first in Memphis for 28 years, and then at KGH for 4 years. He and his wife, Pam, moved to Kingston in 2008. He retired from KGH in 2012. He has 2 sons and 8 grandchildren. He referred to himself as a closet writer throughout his medical career, and then says he uncloseted after his retirement in 2012. His work has appeared in various literary publications in the U.S. and Canada, and in addition, since 2001, he's published a memoir, a short story collection, and a chapbook of poetry called Doctoring in Nicaragua, inspired by experiences in medicine. He also says he is a passionate animal advocate. He is the father to a dozen rescue dogs over 2 decades. And since his retirement, he is also a grief counselor with bereaved families of Ontario and works primarily with parents who have lost a child. If you asked him what he'd say about the origins of iced tea poetry, this book, which there is only one left of, it looks like right now, but I'm sure you can place your order here if you want more. He would say that he doesn't really know. But he says that in this new book of poetry, the poems are many and varied, and that they're fashioned into 9 sections, with those arranged somewhat thematically and are a combination of inspirations and reflections around ideas and memories of loved ones past, nature and animals, chance human encounters, traveling cross country in a small teardrop camper, medicine, and grieving. And just to kind of close this off, I will say briefly that I met Greg in perhaps 2000, early 2001, in there somewhere. And I just read at that time his manuscript, again, for what would become his chapbook, and I was blown away by it. It was published later, as mentioned, in 2021. And here, very recently, have read his now new debut full collection of poetry. I can say the same thing. I love his work. Let's welcome Greg Stidham.
I don't know what to say except all shucks. Yeah, it's really great to be here, and I'm glad to be able to do this. And I want to thank each of you for showing up and giving me a part of your evening to share poetry, which I think is a pretty fine thing to do, actually. So, as was mentioned, this is my first full-length collection, and so this is my first launch, and it's my first reading of this sort. So, jump on board and go for a ride with me tonight. As Bruce mentioned, the book is divided into 8 sections that are loosely coherent within themselves, based upon somewhat upon theme, somewhat upon source of inspiration. So hopefully it'll make a little bit of sense to you. But can everybody hear me okay? Okay, the first one I'd like to read tonight is actually the first one from the book, and it's called Early Shift at Walmart. Descending blue-breasted on the back doors an hour before opening time, they are like water birds descending together onto slow-moving bayou waters. Leather-faced, long, pure white shocks and smile hints of youthful handsomeness. One readies to shopping cart greet you while the middle-aged Latina with 2 missing teeth unlocks and replaces an empty drawer with another bill filled. And Keisha, eggplant-colored hair above the 6-ring pierced left lobe and tiny eyebrow bead, puts in order cases of cosmetics, tubes of lip color, and vials of ersatz scents mimicking expensive ones, her short skirt teasing as she reaches to replace top shelf items. Here are stories and memories and lives, newborn babies, breast cancer mastectomies, parents incarcerated with Alzheimer's, lust bubbling up like lava, God's microcosm of his creation. This one is Girl in the Airport. Moist eyes gaze past fast food kiosks, past milling children flying paper airplanes, playing paper scissors rock, her ears deaf to the din that drives most to distraction. Her nose is slightly rosy, and her eyes she blots with a napkin, and like a lab emerging from a lake, she tosses her head to shake off sadness like water. This next poem was written for a friend of mine who passed away about 3 years ago, I believe. And this was after a long and hard-fought, many years long battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's called Clementines, and it's for Jerry. I pulled a ripe clementine from my parka's pocket and handed it to my friend whose eyes widened. He sat up in his bed and took the orange orb into a shaky hand. Using his thumbnail, he dug out the divot at the fruit's north pole, then stripped the skin down like peeling old wallpaper. Once the orange was naked of its skin, he broke off 2 wedges, slipped them between his lips. After my chemo taste buds die, you know, and in a week or so, when the stem cells take, my taste returns. He took another wedge in his mouth, tossed the scraps of skin in the wastebasket by his bed, adjusted the arm with the IV, and lay back, eyes resting closed, faint smile on his parched, cracked lips. He was actually in the hospital at that time getting tuned up for his second bone marrow transplant. This one's called New Epileptic. Stooping now to retrieve a dropped pen, then standing again, an act so ordinary, the brief passing vertigo, once unnoticed, now triggers thoughts of unruly neurons, plotting their next choreography, the next slapstick they'll direct at my expense, my pride, perhaps even my breath. It's not too morbid, is it?
No, it's beautiful.
This next one is called Ballroom Dancing. I was a 15-year-old janitor in a second-rate suburban hospital where, banished to the basement, I learned to mop and polish linoleum floors. I learned the temperament of the buffer that weighed more than I. I was a rodeo rider who had to tame it and to trust me and follow my commands. A gentle tip up on the handle, a smooth glide to the right, a whispered nudge down, and she floats to the left as though tiptoeing on clouds. What was once like riding an angry bull became ballroom dancing, our feet dusting lightly over the ballroom floor together, just me and the buffer, gliding in time to the harmonies of her humming motor. When my wife and I, Pam, who's sitting back there. Raise your hand. When we moved here in 2008, we had our pack at that time of dogs numbered 4, and there were 2 senior dogs and 2 that were a little bit more youthful. And within a couple or 3 years of our moving here, the 2 senior dogs passed away, leaving the other 2 younger ones who were totally bonded at the hip. I mean, they were like canine soulmates. And within a couple of years, the older of the 2, he also succumbed to a lot of things, old age, but a lot of neurologic things, and he died. And Minnie, who was the surviving dog then, she went instantly into a clinical depression. She stopped eating and drinking, and she stopped wanting to go for walks and stopped wanting to play with other dogs. And it became apparent very quickly that Pam and I had to find her a companion just for the end of her years as well. Not to replace the former dog, but just to provide her the companionship that she would need as she got older herself. So this poem is called An Elegy for Minnie. Dexter roams the house, lost like an elderly person with early dementia, circling the coffee table, then pushing through the doggy door to the back porch deck. He stands at the steps, staring blankly into the garden's lush blooms, looking lost, looking for something, before he comes back through the flapping door to resume his nervous pacing. He knows that his canine partner of 3 years is gone. He watched us bury her in the back, behind the tall pink and yellow freckled lilies next to the beehive. I pat the couch to tell him it is okay to jump up and sit beside me, and he does, carefully lifting himself one leg at a time, and together we sit, both staring into the distance. So about 10 years ago, we bought a small camper trailer. It was like maybe 18 feet, and it was the teardrop style, but it was all self-contained, which allowed us to take 2 dogs with us any place we went. And we did have some experiences with long weekend camping trips around Kingston, around Ontario. But mostly what we ended up using it for was long overland excursions from Kingston to Memphis, which is where Pam's family still lives. And then an even longer trip to the central Colorado mountains, high in the mountains, where we had a log home that was to be our retirement home. And that was before we moved here and fell completely in love with Kingston and with Canada. And now our blood runs maple leaf red. We have no plans of going back to that hellhole. But early on in our camping experience, we also plunged into the otherworldly realm of camping called KOA. I presume everybody knows what a KO is. If you've ever been to one, you quickly realize that this is a whole different culture. You might just be in for a culture shock. So this poem is called KOA. Like honeybees drawn to fields of yarrow, they descend circling in their airstreams, pop-up tents, pop star motorhomes, rounding the perimeter, homing in on the petals of their campsites. They come from Indiana, Ohio, Ontario. They are retirees who limp to restrooms on operated knees. They are 6-year-olds racing bikes or scooters, screaming down paved paths. A few are honeymooners, pulling their blinds closed at dusk. Not everything about KOAs was always pleasant. This one's called Getting Dressed After Showering at a KOA Campground. Is like going to Mass. Please rise. Be seated. Stand now. Now take your seats. Except for kneeling, thank God. My knees wouldn't last, not even the metal one. Be seated, one leg into briefs. Now stand, the other leg. Please be seated. Find your socks. Clark Kent could change in mere seconds from a three-piece suit into cape and night tights regalia in a phone booth cubicle smaller than this one. I can't help but marvel. So there's a bunch of the poems are sort of geographically cohering, I guess, within the sections. And so having moved and falling in love with Ontario, naturally a lot of those experiences early on especially found their way into the poems. And this poem is called Ontario Thaw. Before the arrival of spring's equinox, the smallest of the Great Lakes begins its thaw. The melt begins in the middle, where snow once undulated like sand raked in a Zen rock garden. The ice so thick it bore the weight of snowmobiles. Now the white turns to dark green-gray, and only along the shore does ice still clean white. Then at once, overnight, the water has waves once more. Beside the nearby highway, the face of the granite escarpment, furrowed like an elder's face, weeps a steady stream of tears from foot-long icicles. This one's called Ontario Spring, and I know that some of the ladies here will appreciate this. In Ontario in June, the kayaks appear perched on car tops in droves, like the children in schoolyard playgrounds where stickball replaces hockey. Grandfathers rummage through deep closets retrieving fishing rods and reels. But before June, in May, straw-hatted and gloved women wearing short sleeves appear outdoors in pants below the knees, small shovels in hand, to begin the tedious tilling of the gardens in time before the bees' awakening. So we're going to do another big geographic jump here. As Bruce mentioned, Pam and I lived in Memphis. I lived there for 28 years. Pam was born and raised there. And I was born and pretty much raised in the part of the states called the Midwest, which is really kind of mid-east-west or something. But specifically, I grew up in Ohio, more specifically Cleveland, and I was there most of the time during my training until the very end of my training. And then at the end of my training, I moved to Memphis and began my first real job. And there was a little bit of a culture shock there as well. And so this poem kind of acknowledges or tips its hat to both the good things in that culture and some of the not so good things in that culture. And it's called So This Is Memphis. The heat so hot, an oven open while looking in too closely. The humidity, a sauna towel, wrapping your face, your torso, as you leave your air-conditioned office. The evening barely tolerable despite the porch's ceiling fan. The mosquitoes intelligent, intent on baiting you into a battle you cannot possibly win. While the cicadas' symphonic squawks undulate in the still evening air, still hot and humid, fan notwithstanding. On Beale Street past dusk, the lights turn colorful, flashing not neon, but nearly, as visitors stroll past juke joints turned tourist bars no true bluesman can afford, while on the street, preteen black kids tap dance or break dance, traversing the block in backflips faster than the tourists can walk. Beale Street meanders down to the riverfront, where black men loaded paddle-powered riverboats, hauling bales of cotton up plank, soon headed north for lucrative sale. They sweat in heat like their homelands, but under the threat of the crack of a whip. The cotton headed north for money and for pristine shirts of wealthy whites. And I'm willing to bet that there's not too many people here that have ever heard of, I guess you'd call it a pastime or sport. It's called noodling catfish. Nobody? I really urge you to go home tonight and get on YouTube and look up noodling catfish. You'll be amazed. So this is called noodling the Wolf River. Just upstream from where the Wolf River slides its clear water into the Mississippi's mud, redneck boys probe the banks with 6-foot poles. July sun broils their bare backs, water slowly swirling to the belt loops of their denim cutoffs. 3 of them, young, blonde hair long, with wisps of chin fuzz, pecs rippling as they prod and poke in search of bank holes, the small caves where catfish lay their eggs and lie in wait. I got something, yells one, stooping, reaching underwater to his chin, and like a lifter in a weight room, he grunts up from his squat. Water, now a fury, his arm thrust to the elbow in the mouth of a 40-pound flathead, his fingers curled out tight around the fish's gasping gill. Mississippi Delta. Endless expanses of fields of cotton, rice, and soy stretch from the river to the horizon, where the crops touch the blaze of the setting sun. It is said the Delta meanders from the lobby of the Peabody Hotel in Memphis to Catfish Row in Vicksburg, the rich black soil giving off its river smell, guitar picking instead of cotton picking, the voices of the blues still seeping out through the walls of juke joints in Clarksdale, Batesville, and Helena, the blues born here a century ago, where the fields flooded every spring and white-hooded, cross-burning lynchers roamed until just decades ago. This land remains alive as the catfish wallowing in the river's mud. Okay, get ready for another geographic jump. We're going back to Colorado. This is called Morning Red Fox. Overcast gray Colorado mountain morning, 5 inches of snow, dead grass stems sticking straight up. 14,000-foot Chavano backdrops in the distance, and then the red fox stalks, 1 foot, one small step at a time, eyes fixed ahead. Then the bolting blur of a jackrabbit streaks straight toward the log cabin, fox springing into light-speed chase till the rabbit finds the firewood pile and vanishes, while the fox slows before the wood, stopping, looking side to side, sniffing. Finding nothing, he wanders hungrily off, pausing by a tree to hike a leg, and disappears, the rabbit safe once more in the connected caverns within the woodpile. There's several poems in this book that were inspired by experiences that I had in my work in the pediatric ICU over the years. And part of that work involved a program that I actually was in charge of, where we would go to the Children's Hospital in Managua once a year at least for about 10, 12 years, sometimes twice a year, and we would take a team down there and do surgeries for children who had congenital heart disease. And this poem is the one that lent its name to the chapbook that has already been mentioned. It's called Doctoring in Nicaragua. Excuse me. Like an old-time silent movie, my memories of Managua flicker in faded black and white, halting and jerking, just like the tiny taxis darting round the roundabouts, punctuating the city's boulevards. Nurses in starchy white uniforms, housekeepers with mops at attention, black-haired children with zippered chests, healing hearts beating beneath bandages with the newfound certainty of a metronome. This one is called The Lock. In the dim room with curtained glass walls, monitors dark and quiet, I watched him. With tiny manicure scissors, the type used to trim a baby's nails, he snipped a strand of hair from the very back of the boy's still head. A near-perfect blonde ringlet he gently slid into a Ziploc baggie. Pausing, he placed the lock in the outer pocket of his duffel bag, likely stuffed with clean and dirty socks and underwear from 3 bedside days and endless nights sleeping stiffly in an overstuffed chair. He kissed the boy's forehead, stood and turned, nodded to me, and walked out the door. This one is called Powerless. The woman with short hair looks up, finds your eyes, begs with her salty gaze, please help, do something. You've already told her nothing more can be done. She looks away, takes her boy's hand in hers, presses it to her forehead, her shoulders bobbing like a buoy in a Newfoundland harbor. And you are enshrouded with the darkness of impotence. Holding a baby. Sometimes things seem so simple, so certain, like the still warm body of the infant girl, born with the fallible heart, held by her young aunt when her parents couldn't. When the aunt asked, "Would you like to hold her?" So simple, so certain, so obvious a choice. Take that body, hold it like a living infant, like my own perhaps, and not like the child whose heart I couldn't coax to continue. All right, before you guys call me Debbie Downer, I've got 2 that are from the last section of the book, which are musings about the creative process, and in particular the creative process that's involved in making poetry. The first is called Pens and Indentations. I still have an indentation in the middle finger of my right hand, a callus of sorts, but I think more a bone spur from holding pencils and then pens many hours a day for many, many years. Ballpoints, roller balls, big broad Sharpies before the discovery of classic fountain pens. Their phallic shapes, the erotic flow of ink oozing from nib to paper. That was before the Macintosh and the keyboard reinvented it all. Poems once channeled from brain to pen to paper in one smooth passage, now filtered, keyboard, computer, screen, and printer. But the finger indentation survives, and my Mont Blanc still fits, like a senior man spooning in bed with his long-suffering senior spouse. And this last one will hopefully answer the question that I know has been burning in everybody's mind. Why the hell is it called iced tea poetry?
Yes.
Funny story, it took about 3 revisions of the copies and the proofs and everything before my publisher realized it was not iced tea party. No, it's not iced tea party. It's iced tea poetry. A poem is like cold tea. Once steeped, add ice, and then your own flair. A splash of lemon juice, a sprig of mint, perhaps a raspberry you squeeze, bleeding just before you drop it in. Then sip its elegance, and know there will never be this very same poem again. Same tea again. I got that far. last line of the last poem. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out, and those of you who I don't know, I'd appreciate it if you'd like to come up and just introduce yourselves and say hello and chat for a bit. I'm going to be hanging around here for a while, and any of you who choose or have chosen to purchase the book, I'd be happy to sign it for you. And I do hope that you find one or two things in there that give you pleasure. I want to say thank you to Oscar and Joanna and the rest of the staff here at Novel Idea for making this event possible. I cannot even imagine a better venue for doing something like this. So maybe another round of applause for that. And also for Bruce. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me, or comments, or?
What's the span of years in creating all of these poems?
There are a couple that appeared in the chapbook, The Doctoring in Nicaragua, which was published 2 years ago. And so those would probably be anywhere from 2 to possibly 5 years, but there weren't that many. And most of these were a period of about 2 years, from 2021 to 2022. And so, if you ask me what inspired them, I don't know.
Life, that's right.
Life. Yeah.
Life.
Yeah.
Are you continuing to write?
Am I continuing to write? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not optional. It got suppressed for way too many years in medical school and residency and practice. So now it's unsuppressed or uncloseted. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Did you write when you were practicing medicine?
Yes. Yeah, I did. I mean, I didn't write. I mean, it wasn't. I didn't have the time or really the knowledge to write in a really serious way, and that came after I had this big opening in my life when I retired from medicine, and I thought, this is my opportunity, and I can really try to perfect the craft and the art of writing, especially poetry, although I've dabbled in other genres as well. But so yeah, I was writing all throughout. It's like I said, it's not optional.
Did you dabble in good emails?
Pardon me?
Did you dabble in good emails?
Dabble in good emails?
There's a lot of people put a lot of thought into emails. And it doesn't even matter who they're sending it.
I don't know.
I thought you might be one of those.
Well, not in the text of the emails, but I think you've gotten a couple of emails from me from my private email address, and there's always a little quote down at the bottom, and it's a quote by this infamous individual named Nigel Fishley, and there's a lot of thought that goes into those. Yes.
Well, I enjoyed the variety and the feeling that you have taken an interest in everything you do and everywhere you go and everyone you run into, etc. That should keep you young for a good long time.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. There's in the very first page, the front page of the book, there's a quote from another poet, and it says something that I think is really germane to like my thoughts about poetry and what it can be and what it can do. And my favorite poet contemporary English poet is a guy named Ted Kooser, and Ted is he's probably 84 years old now. See somebody nodding.
Cotton candy.
Oh,
Yes.
every single thing he ever has written is spectacular. But he has this gift of seeing things that are ordinary things, you know, or ordinary events, or people that are just doing ordinary things, like an older couple having lunch in a lunchroom, and they share they divide a sandwich into two and share it, and he's just observing this, and it's just a description of that, and you think, oh God, how boring is that? It's not. It's like so powerful and so moving that you just don't even want to read anymore. and I think I know that I am drawn to that kind of poetry, and I aspire to write maybe 1/100th as well as he writes. He's also become a friend. He lives in a little town outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, on a ranch. It's called Garland, Nebraska, which happens to be right off of I-80. And when we're driving from Kingston to Colorado, we take I-80 forever and ever and ever, right past Lincoln, and it became a ritual for us to always stop and spend the night outside of Lincoln and get together with Ted and have lunch with him. And when one time he took us to his favorite place where his workshop is, and I thought his workshop, that's probably just where he goes to write. I was later to find out that it was something much more than that, but it's a little town called Dwight, Nebraska, and its population is about 200. It has one intersection, but it also is an area that was settled by people from Czechoslovakia in the late 19th century. And there's a diner there called Size Diner, or Size Cafe. Size Cafe. And it has about 4 tables, linoleum tables, and plastic chairs, and that's his favorite place. And we walk in there, and the 2 women who are actually owners, the daughters of the guy who I think started it years and years ago, they know Ted by name, by first name, and he knows them by name. And we walked in and they say, "Oh, hi, Ted. The usual?" And my wife and I kind of looked at each other because we're both vegetarians. And we're thinking, Dwight, Nebraska. What are we going to be able to order? So I think we had a grilled cheese sandwich and a slice of tomato.
In conversation.
Anything else? Anybody?
I have a comment.
Well, first over here, Annie.
Okay.
She raised her hand first.
I did just wonder what you fell in love with about Canada.
Everything.
Or you could we could have a beer later. Might take longer than.
Well, I mean, it's. I mean, I'm people. I mean, you people who have been here a lot longer than I have might not totally agree, even. But I mean, it has the reputation for being tolerant, and believe me, compared to the States, it really, really is. I mean, I hope you don't watch CNN, but if you do, you'll know that how intolerant the States have become. And the people here we found, coming from the deep South, where people who are total strangers, they see you, and if they recognize you, they'll run up to you and they'll throw their arms around you and say, "Oh, it is so good to see you. It is so good to see you. What's your name again?" And what we found when we moved here was that people were a lot more reserved. You could walk down the sidewalk, and I was kind of used to like catching somebody's eye and go, "Hey, how's it going?" And we found that wasn't like the norm. But we also found that behind that sort of, I don't know how to describe it, sort of distance, it seemed, but it wasn't really. And behind that are some of the warmest, and friendliest individuals that we've ever met. And it helps a lot to know that they're not carrying a gun.
Absolutely.
Kind of makes you relax a little bit more. So yes.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw this out and you can tell me if I'm right. What I heard when you were reading your poems was an incredible ability to observe detail. I know you said that about your friend, but I saw that or that's what I heard in your poems. And I'm gonna guess that that's what made you an excellent pediatrician. Because children can't tell you often. And so I'm just wondering if you've seen that link.
That is a really nice thing to say. And I have known, throughout my medical career, how much the medicine, and not just the medicine, but the encounters with the really, really sick kids. I was the pediatrician you never wanted to take your kid to. And with the parents and the families, those connections are just, they're precious, they're invaluable. So I know for a fact that medicine has informed a lot of my poetry. And I'd like to think that in a complicated, a little bit more complex way, my poetry and my love of poetry and my endeavors to write poetry has also informed how I practice medicine. So I guess the easy answer is yes. Well, I'm about ready to quit.
Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody has any books you'd like me to put my illegible penmanship to. That was the one that was the one course I passed.
Yeah. And if, I don't know, but he does send out and shares poems that he just reads, not his own, but he'll share something that he reads and he just wants to share with people. And if you'd like that, maybe just put a check mark. And if not, whatever. You can always tell him, just take me off the list. He's not offended if he sends too much, because he sends quite a bit of poetry out.
I'll bet your penmanship.
And by the way, Canadians love to hear people say nice things about us.
Oh, listen,
We do. We always love to hear Americans say, yes, you guys are so good.
oh my goodness. Well, we had planned on moving to Colorado. Like, we had this home that we always had been visiting, but we felt fine back there. So we got here and I was like, I don't remember when I was like, I don't want to leave. We can go there. That can be our cottage. It's just a long way away, but it can be our cottage.
Right.
You know?
Oh, that's very nice.
So,
But I have to say, I've never, I've been to the United States a number of times. I've always found people in the United States to be incredibly friendly.
they are.
Incredibly friendly. But what is happening there is heartbreaking. And I don't think they know there's another way to live.
Right, yeah, and it's crazy for me because a lot of times people that do know anything about the States, they'll think, oh wait, you're in Tennessee, so I told some of my neighbors that are here and that, when we moved here, it was right when Obama was coming, he was gonna be, that November was gonna
The only thing I could think to do was
and so I had a sign, and I said, I'm taking these with me, and I'm sticking in our yard, so that they'll know, if they know anything about the States, which they probably do, because everybody seems to know everything about the States, nobody in the States knows anything about Canada. It's crazy.
And what's also has been observation, I was just down in the Adirondacks, I have a sister-in-law who's living in Texas right now.
Oh, wow.
And they have a place in the Adirondacks. And I was, obviously she was raised in Canada, and I was saying to her,
it's like
That was great. That was really, really nice. Me too. We always, I always read the poems.
Yeah, there you go. She asked good to see.
Yeah, I know.
yeah, just that For example, we don't know our neighbor's politics, nor do we care.
Right.
Like,
And
it's not-
so divisive
It's
down
not,
here.
yeah, like
But
it's
I just
just,
figured if anybody.
no, but it's just sort of that live and let live. That's the, I would say that's the,
You don't even, like, you don't really have to feel that compelled to put a sign out in your yard here. It's
No.
just that, if somebody, you get to know somebody, you know, that is running for an office, like your area, for your area. And you like them and they ask you, and you're like, yeah, because we're on a corner. You know, we want that. But, but it was just funny
well,
because I
my
thought.
two best friends are conservatives and I'm liberal.
Yeah.
I mean, it does, so what?
Yeah.
We have great debates,
There you go.
but it's just that.
But it's not, you're never gonna hate each other
Oh
because
my
of it.
gosh, no.
I know, see, and it's torn families
I'm
apart.
Jane.
I'm Pam.
I'm Pam, and
Nice to-
I'm a friend of Brenda's.
Oh, nice, I love Brenda. She
Yeah.
lives, just like, probably 8 or so houses away from us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're right down, if you ever go to her house, it's, we're down towards King, and we're there's one street that cuts through, Davidson.
Oh, yes?
And
Oh, I know Davidson.
There's a tree right on the corner, and we always post a poem that we really
Because
like.
I'm also in Open Voices.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
So you were with, and it was for a long time, like Andy.
I've only been in it for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so
Well,
Andy's
you
the
know
choir
Andy,
director.
yeah,
Yeah, and I know he was on the corner.
Yeah, and he used to live on Davidson, but he did move away.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Yeah, we miss him, but we actually ran into him at a concert the other night.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's good to see him.
Yeah. Anyways, well, nice to meet you, Pam.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for taking the time to say something. Is this yours?
Yeah, that's mine.
Okay, yeah, I'm not rushing you at all.
No, that's okay.
There's some cheese over there. Looks like nobody's even gotten into it.
Where to set this down, but I'm going to go put it back.
As long as I'm not stepping on you, that's the main thing.
And we read her mom's
Oh, yes.
journal together. She said I
How
was
are
the
you?
only person who she would share with.
I saw you going by her house the other day.
Yeah, very slowly, probably.
Yeah, and I thought you had told me that you said, yeah, I never told you one time, I don't know, months ago, and then, anyway, and I
So,
thought,
I honestly, I find it hard to
Greg goes, yeah, looks like Michael. I said, yep, I think so. So we both thought so, so we figured we were.
So that's why.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
But it's therapeutic for me. I get it out of my
husband, he
system
goes on
and
for
then I.
that got off the place, America. Fantastic place. But I know what it means.
Pardon me?
You know.
Oh, of course, I will try. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, it's just,
Oh, we're there.
I know it, and I have my family there, but I'm still.
Yeah.
I mean, years ago, you know, there'd be crime. Families disputes or something, or somebody stole somebody's girlfriend, or whatever, but,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's a little
Yeah.
unnerving, especially now that we've gotten so used to the lovely calmness of Kingston, you know? And, but
Yeah, it's a bit of a shock. Yeah.
It is.
No, but there's so many fantastic people there.
There are.
That they're all drowned out right now. I think that's what the way I see it. And it's kind of sad for those people that they're just drowned out. They're being drowned out by the politicians fighting, trying to counteract all the conflicts. Everybody else has to just shut up.
Thankfully, though, I kind of found out that the very, very good person and it's the way hi, good to have you. Just got elected as the mayor. So I will Memphis is the one. Sitting and reading Thank you.
I'm honored. It's
They're the
amazing.
one.
I think that's
Tennessee.
that's
You know,
I've been through it a couple of times. I've driven. My sister lives in New Orleans, or one of my sisters. So I
drove down there one time and drove back then up through Memphis and
Did you, where did you actually have to?
where I grew up in Ireland in Waterford, the sunny southeast they call it. Yeah.
My dad's family was from
Okay.
Yeah.
Where the
He
bike
was-
racing
I'm a
is,
musician.
yeah.
Yeah, well, he was born in the States, in Ohio, but, just right across, well,
I've actually got plans to,
like
guess
Erie,
what? I'm
just
not a
like
psychiatrist, but I
Pennsylvania border.
I left them all support already, but I'm
Yeah, he
finishing
never
the patient
sounded
research.
southern.
I figured
The rest of the family, but,
Not for,
I had lots of relatives who lived in Ohio and Illinois and stuff like that, but they were
cannabis.
Yes,
all,
I was
uh,
supposed to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
back
yeah.
to music and I'm planning on
clerical
recording
people,
it
they were
all.
priests.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this was in the 1800s, early 1900s.
Nice,
And he was
nice.
admitted.
Yeah.
Have you done some of your family
did.
history?
Sure, my email address.
My sister-in-law has done
I'll have
it,
to
yeah.
put glasses up for this.
The book?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. And it was interesting, they were talking about
Like,
it.
I guess
So
so.
now
They said
No, it's just,
that
I-
the
I'm
arts
doing
is
straight.
more
Just
profitable
your
Oh,
with
wow.
the
There's
underage
only
My.
5 of us left. All my brothers are gone.
Oh, wow.
get it, but they don't get it. The
Okay.
biggest problem is
Either
between
way.
the 18
Yeah,
and
but
25.
you're taking good care of yourself, so. You know
I
how
was
to
up
do
in a
that
ladder
anyway.
today, this afternoon.
You were where?
Up in a ladder,
Oh,
cleaning,
okay.
cleaning things, the hose,
And they pounded
Yeah.
trying to get the mud out off there and the silt and the old dead leaves and stuff.
Yeah. Your family retired?
Yeah.
We just met.
Yeah.
Okay.
In December. Yeah.
Okay, well, I thought you did, but then I was like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
there was something that made me.
Yeah, retired
Maybe you were
from
still
COVID.
doing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Retired before COVID.
So excited. You get away from it all.
Yes, that's the thing, like, Greg wrote all this stuff during COVID.
Yeah, he writes all the time. He has, like, I'm looking back and last year he had 120
Bruce was just telling us.
something poems that he wrote, you know, last year. That's the ones he kept. Who knows how many he really wrote, but yeah.
Anyway, so I'll really drop by and I'll try to be more social. I told you that before and I haven't done it.
It's okay, we should run out and grab you when we see you go by, but you're trying to exercise, I guess. But come by on the last little jaunt, and that way you won't feel guilty
That'd be
stopping.
slow down.
There you go.
Okay,
Good
Pam.
to see you. Thanks for stopping in. I love it.
Doing it early enough, I guess. Well, that'll be nice. Jason's the next yeah. It's got unique music. The pianist, she is a gifted composer, and her own compositions make you do this. It's Zen. I have 2 of her albums. It's amazing. There has to be some sort of mathematical connection to how she plays. I don't even know. That makes it absolutely relaxing. But it's a physical reaction, so there's gotta be some science behind it. It's the way she plays though. She doesn't play with perfect timing when she's going on. She has to go to the other floor. She plays it quickly. Yeah, I did.
That's okay.
So this is my.
What is your name? What is it? Kiki. Kiki. Oh, I love it.
Bought and paid for. When you're born and raised in a religious cult and you escape it,
So it's 8:30.
something makes you go, I want that name to look.
So you've got time to meet him.
Did you send it? Good.
I'm pumping.
Oh,
Okay, and okay.
just when I go with you, I've got my
So you didn't make that. I'm a bit freaky about telling
how people.
Did you have a website then too?
I thought.
do to have a Facebook page.
The American Standard was talking about with the
Yeah, I think that's close.
The person who I trusted with.
when I was suggesting places for him to go in Ontario.
Are you hearing?
I
New York. And I was just
patient
researcher. picture, so I figured it's.
You're thinking, we're still
Yeah.
We didn't break away the way you wild Americans did.
Wild cowboys. That's good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Being from Memphis, you know I'm gonna love that. No, you can look up on my YouTube account. My poetry.
I'm kind of
I
a big reader, Jane.
myself singing.
Low
Over
income.
COVID,
Some
I
things
took
are
some
easy.
vocal rehab
To be
I
honest.
had been for years.
It's easy to turn on your
Netflix
eyes.
my eyes. So much 'cause I have a full
Yeah, I
reading.
can't.
So
Tell her
I'll be
I'll be happy to sign
It
that.
clicks. Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. So that's like
Just for you, look it up.
But I read it. It
Right.
was a good
Yeah,
thing out of
it's
COVID.
good.
I have a bunch of videos up there that are all my
Keep young, thinking.
Well, like I said, it's not optional.
I only had my peanut butter for dinner.
Hi.
I didn't
Jane,
mind
hi, I'm
it.
Greg.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I know, and that's the way we are. I said, that's
I
not
figured she said that she was bringing friends. Yeah.
We just had a little snack.
That's
Don't
what I
don't
was
eat
afraid
that. Don't eat too much.
It took
I'm gonna have quinoa.
3 days of
garlic
diarrhea
mashed
to
potatoes,
prepare
and
for it.
gravy.
Were you nervous?
I was nervous.
No, that was good. That was great.
Oh, good.
Well, now you're gonna have a hearty meal and.
Actually, I had 2 pieces of pizza, which I thought was maybe not such a good idea before coming down.
Yes.
But it worked out. Oh, thanks for
Oh my, oh no. It has to do with a lot of my research
Thank you.
surrounding my.
So
you never write a novel?
Something out about myself.
Do I what?
That's it.
So are you ever
Got
gonna
your
write a
own?
novel?
Yeah, specimen to go on.
A novel?
I know. I'm trying to figure out how to answer that. I have one that I started,
Yes.
and I could probably finish it, but my real love is poetry. So that's kind of on a back burner.
Okay.
But I like to experiment with different things. I have one of the books that was mentioned was a collection of short stories, and writing those, the creative process for writing a short story is completely different from writing a poem.
Well, it's easier. Is it hard?
No, right, yeah, right.
Because it's short to the point.
That actually probably makes it harder.
I think so.
It's so different. I know that you can really compare.
You say hi, Robert.
Yeah.
I will say goodbye to Pernita for them. They've gone. They've departed from us.
Bye, girls.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we have a non-book club. It's the 4 of us. And then I said to them, instead of just doing dinner, do you want to go? So our non-book club is going to go to a book of reading.
Oh,
So that's what we did.
that's great. That's so funny.
Thank you.
But you know what? They were fabulous.
Aw.
It was really good.
That was so sweet.
Thank you.
Good night.
What
Bye.
is your name?
Catherine.
Catherine. Was that